The stadium was alive that night in Berlin, buzzing with energy. But the moment the red card went up, the noise evaporated. A heavy silence swept across the pitch, and the shock was also felt outside the arena. Around the world, millions of fans stared at their screens in disbelief as Zinedine Zidane took his final walk off a football pitch. But this wasn't the walk of a champion. There was no trophy raised high or a victory lap. Instead, he strode past the gleaming golden World Cup so close he could have reached out and touched it. Instead, he had his head hanging low as he disappeared down the tunnel. That image has haunted football fans for nearly 20 years. One of the greatest players of all time, a man whose genius felt untouchable, leaving the world stage not to the sound of applause, but to a stunned, breathless silence. We often talk about Zidane's story through his brilliance, his goals, his elegance, his trophies. But this moment reminds us that greatness isn't only measured by the heights you reach, it's also etched into the way you fall. But before all of that, let's start from the beginning, because Zidane had already built a legend that spanned continents. Born in Marseille in 1972 to Algerian immigrant parents, his rise was nothing short of legendary. The fifth of 5 siblings, Zidane learned to play soccer on the concrete pitches of La Castellane, a neighbourhood often associated with poverty and crime. But even there, his talent was undeniable, which explains why it was not hard for scouts to spot him at a local youth tournament. And at just 16, he debuted for Cannes in Ligue 1. In his first full season, he helped the club achieve something remarkable: a 4th place finish in the league and qualification for European competition. From there, his career started moving forward at a very stable pace. And soon after, he was moving from one team to another. A transfer to Bordeaux saw him become the creative heartbeat of a team that shocked Europe by reaching the 1996 UEFA Cup final. Zidane's elegance on the ball, his ability to control the tempo, and his knack for producing magic under pressure made him irresistible to Europe's biggest clubs. Then Juventus signed him that summer, and fans believed that Italy was where Zidane cemented himself as one of the world's best. In Turin, he won 2 Serie A titles, the Intercontinental Cup, and twice claimed the title of Serie A Foreign Footballer of the Year. But contrary to popular belief, spectators think he wasn't a flashy player in the modern sense. He didn't need stepovers or exaggerated tricks. Instead, he had an almost mystical composure. Even Arsene Wenger once said Zidane seemed touched by the angels. Zidane could freeze a game in motion with a single touch, his pirouettes and feints hypnotizing defenders. Juventus fans adored him, but the world truly began to understand his genius when he wore the blue of France. And it was there that his story would become bigger than football itself. In the summer of 1998, France hosted the World Cup, and Zidane became its face. After a shaky start that included a red card against Saudi Arabia, Zidane returned for the knockout stages and delivered when it mattered most. In the final against Brazil, he scored 2 towering headers, leading France to a 3-0 victory and their first ever World Cup triumph. Overnight, Zidane became a national hero. His bald head was projected onto the Arc de Triomphe, and he was hailed as a symbol of multicultural France. 2 years later, he would guide Le Bleu to victory again, this time in Euro 2000, cementing his place as the greatest French footballer of his generation. And then, Real Madrid shattered transfer records to bring him to Spain in 2001 for €75 million. It was in Madrid where Zidane's artistry would produce one of football's most iconic moments: the 2002 Champions League final against Bayer Leverkusen. The ball looped in from the sky, and with his weaker foot, Zidane struck a volley so perfectly timed, so elegant that it seemed destined to ripple the net. It was a goal that summed him up completely, graceful yet devastating. Madrid won the trophy, and Zidane added the Champions League to his long list of achievements. By 2004, UEFA voters named him the greatest European player of the past 50 years. But football's greatest stories are rarely linear. In 2004, after a disappointing Euro campaign that ended in a shock defeat to Greece, Zidane announced his retirement from international football. His body was tired, his hunger fading. At 32, he seemed content to step away from the spotlight. Yet 1 year later, in a moment that would shape football history, Zidane changed his mind. He said he had heard a voice, a mysterious calling he never fully explained, urging him to return. France was struggling to qualify for the 2006 World Cup, and the nation's golden generation had begun to fade. Zidane's comeback was a spark of hope, and when he rejoined the team alongside Claude Makélélé and Lilian Thuram, France found new life, scraped through qualification and headed to Germany with their captain leading them one last time. What no one knew then was that this final chapter would make him immortal, for reasons no one could have imagined. That World Cup began quietly. France looked uninspired in the group stage, drawing against Switzerland and South Korea. Zidane, now 34, was suspended for the final group match and watched nervously from the sidelines as his teammates scraped a victory over Togo to progress. Many thought the magician was done, that his best days were behind him. But Zidane wasn't finished. In the round of 16 against a young and hungry Spain, Zidane reminded the world who he was. He orchestrated the game with effortless control, set up Patrick Vieira's goal, and in injury time, he dribbled past defenders before smashing a clinical finish past Iker Casillas. That goal was more than just a strike. It was a declaration. Zidane was back. Next came Brazil, the reigning champions, boasting a team filled with icons. Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Kaká. It was the kind of lineup that terrified opponents before kickoff. But that night, it wasn't Brazil's flair the world would remember, it was Zidane's. What unfolded over those 90 minutes would become one of the greatest individual performances in World Cup history. Zidane toyed with legends. Every touch was deliberate, every movement effortless. He spun past Ronaldinho, flicked the ball over Ronaldo's head, and orchestrated the game like a maestro conducting a symphony. His perfectly placed free kick to Thierry Henry sealed Brazil's fate. The reigning champions had been humbled, and the entire world stood in awe of Zidane. The semi-final against Portugal was equally tense. One penalty was all it took, and France was heading to the World Cup final. Zidane's last stage was now set. Berlin, July 9th, 2006. The atmosphere in the Olympia Stadion was electric. Zidane's face was calm, but his eyes betrayed a quiet fire. Just 7 minutes into the match, he stepped up to take a penalty, and instead of power or precision, he opted for audacity. A Panenka clipped gently off the crossbar and into the net. The kind of goal you only attempt if you're fearless. France led. Italy equalised soon after, and the game turned into a chess match, with every tackle, every pass carrying the weight of a nation's dreams. Then, in extra time, Zidane nearly wrote the perfect ending. He ghosted into the box, meeting a cross with a thunderous header, and for a split second, time froze. It was destined for the top corner. But Gianluigi Buffon soared and produced a miraculous save, tipping the ball over the bar. It could have been the greatest farewell in football history. Instead, it was the last warning before tragedy struck. With just 10 minutes left in extra time, Zidane exchanged words with Marco Materazzi. What was said would only be revealed later, but in that moment, something inside Zidane snapped, setting the stage for a moment that would define him forever. Zidane turned, walked toward him, and with one swift motion, drove his head into Materazzi's chest. The Italian crumpled to the ground. The stadium fell silent. The referee consulted his assistants, and moments later, the red card was raised. Zidane's final act as a professional footballer wasn't a goal or a celebration. It was violence. And as he walked off, passing the World Cup trophy without so much as a glance, the world watched in stunned silence. France would lose on penalties, but that wasn't the story. The story was Zidane, the fallen king. The backlash was immediate. French newspaper L'Equipe called the headbutt odious. Frank Leboeuf said he was ashamed. Parents across France faced difficult questions from their children about their hero's behaviour. But the public reaction wasn't entirely condemnation. Crowds filled the Place de la Concorde, chanting "Zizou, Zizou," as if to protect their legend. President Jacques Chirac publicly defended him, praising him as a man of heart and conviction. Polls showed over 60% of French people had already forgiven him. In disgrace, Zidane was somehow still adored. Days later, in a rare TV interview, Zidane addressed the world. He apologized to children and fans, but refused to apologize to Materazzi. "I'd rather die than apologize to him," he said firmly. That single statement divided opinion, but revealed Zidane's loyalty, his pride, and his humanity. The headbutt became more than a scandal. It became a cultural landmark. Adidas printed shirts, artists created paintings. A 16-foot bronze statue called Coupe de Tête immortalized the moment in Paris before moving to Doha. Zidane's fall was turned into art. His genius was framed not just by goals, but by imperfection. And that's what makes this story haunting. Zidane was a ballerina and a warrior, a man of elegance and rage. He'd been sent off before, even for headbutting. But this was different. This was the last page of his career, and it was messy, human, unforgettable. For a month in 2006, Zidane carried France on his back. He was awarded the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player, but all anyone remembers is that lonely walk past the trophy. That image captures everything: his brilliance, his flaws, his tragedy. Football has given us countless moments of triumph, but the ones we can't forget often come from heartbreak. Zidane's exit wasn't the fairy tale ending fans wanted, but it's the one that made him immortal. The silence in that stadium echoed louder than cheers ever could. He didn't fade quietly. He burned until the very last second. And maybe that's why, when we think of Berlin 2006, we don't just see a red card. We see a man who embodied genius and fury, art and imperfection. Zidane's last walk still haunts football because it isn't just a scandal, It's a painting, a myth, a story that reminds us legends are human. And that's exactly why they endure.